We don't know who is coming here, why they're coming here.
Welcome back to Square Off. That was Republican State Representative John Kavanagh rolling out the unwelcome mat for Afghan refugees being resettled in Scottsdale and all over the valley. They helped the American military in Afghanistan, and now, after their evacuation, when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, they're building a new life in America. And some folks have questions. Joining us is Nejra Sumic. She is National Field Manager for the We Are All America Coalition. They work with resettlement agencies here in Arizona to ensure a smooth transition for refugees. Welcome to Square Off.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're a former refugee yourself, fleeing with your family from a civil war in Bosnia, then being granted asylum in the United States. So help us understand, based on your experience, what are many of these Afghan refugees going through right now?
Yeah, so, when people leave in these extenuating circumstances, it's really a matter of time and urgency for them to get out in order for them to protect their lives and their safety and well-being. And so particularly for Afghan families who were rushed out during the evacuation process, there was not much time for them to be able to pack their belongings and say goodbye to families. And that's how many times refugees leave under very extenuating and urgent circumstances in order to avoid going through these difficult times that's happening in their countries, and just to get to safety.
In this case, these were folks who helped the American military, so they may have had a price on their heads.
Exactly. Majority of them are coming under what is called a special immigrant visa, which means that they worked for the U.S. military or the U.S. government, and because of that, they are much more vulnerable and at risk with the Taliban to be harmed and their families because they work for the U.S. military.
And so lots of folks might not know this, but Arizona ranks as one of the most welcoming states in the country for refugees. And that goes back 40 years. We played a clip of State Representative John Kavanagh wondering who these refugees were, what are they doing here. What would you say to lawmakers like him?
We've worked for many years here in Arizona. There's 4 resettlement agencies, and the resettlement program has been around since 1980. We have resettled over 80,000 refugees here in Arizona, and there is a really big refugee community of different ethnic groups here in Arizona, and it really has enriched the diversity in our cities. You will see many restaurants in northern and west side of Phoenix. These are all former refugees who own these, and our community has always been very welcoming. And in addition to that, we had our governor back in August during the evacuation, and Speaker Bowers have a statement of welcome for our Afghan newcomers.
And that's one thing John Kavanagh apparently wasn't aware of, and I want to read just a piece of that statement. Quote, "The Afghans fleeing the Taliban regime served alongside America's military forces and fought for freedom. We're grateful for their efforts, and Arizona wholeheartedly welcomes our fair share of the refugees in our state." Now, many folks with the best of intentions do have questions, so walk us through the process. Arizona's accepting about 2,000 refugees, I think, people who work for the American military and their families. One of the big questions is, how are they vetted?
So, first of all, families back home overseas will have to go through the UNHCR office, which is the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees office. And there is a really strict definition and criteria for a refugee. Number 1, they must cross an international border. Number 2, they must be fleeing persecution because of their religion, their social status, political persecution, tribal affiliation. So there are specific criteria. And then they have to go through the UNHCR to ensure that they meet this criteria. Once that is done, then they start the application process, which can take 2 to 3 years. And most people, only from those that apply, only 1% actually make it to a third country. Once they're approved, particularly for the Afghan families, they were also vetted because they worked for the US military, the US government. But once they arrive, they've been at the military bases to ensure, proper protocol and processing it, their paperwork is finalized before they're sent to their homes.
And to talk about how they find housing here, food, jobs. Representative Kavanaugh did that video in front of a hotel in Scottsdale that is housing a number of Afghan refugees. How do they get placed there or in other homes?
Yeah, so through the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program, most states have the local resettlement program. Here in Arizona, as I mentioned, there are 4 refugee resettlement agencies that oversee and help these families integrate into their new communities. And so the resettlement agencies are really responsible for that integration process, the cultural orientation. They're assigned case managers who help them with workforce. They help them with getting children assigned to school. So they help them with the whole process, finding housing. And right now, we are currently just facing such a difficult housing challenges here in Arizona, I'm sure, as you all know. So we are having, many of these families are being placed in Airbnbs or the hotels because we are in the process of finding them permanent housing.
And some parents in Scottsdale apparently were jarred by the news that about 80 Afghan children would be attending Scottsdale schools. The school district is welcoming, even with the challenges of dealing with COVID-19. You were once that child. How much of a challenge is it to assimilate these children?
I mean, it's a difficult process because, as you can imagine, you've been taken out of your home, what you know as a child, and children are used to structure, right? Children need structure. And so it's really important that we get these children. They've been out of school for months now at the military bases. So it's really important that we get them into schools. That way they can start their integration process. Many of them already speak English. Some will need ESL classes. But with my own personal experience, I learned English within matter of a few months. So children pick up really fast. And I think we have plenty of resources to give, for the children that are coming, particularly in the Scottsdale schools.
Finally, some folks watching this might decide, I want to help. What can people do to help?
Look up the resettlement agencies. There's Catholic Charities, there's International Rescue Committee, there's Lutheran Social Services, and there's Arizona Refugee and Immigrant Services. They all have their websites and have a clear list of volunteer opportunities, because right now there's such a huge need. And there's other refugee serving organizations that help, such as Gathering Humanities, who help with the apartment furnishings and donations and welcoming to America. So I would say connect with those organizations because right now, we can use the help.
Nejra Sumic, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for the work you do.